Here we're going to take a look at filling out some quarterly forms for the state and for SUTA, for unemployment for the state. Do realize that there is already a YouTube video out on filling out the 941 for the federal quarterly forms. So let's take a look first at the SIT form for South Carolina. Now each state is a little bit different, and you have Pennsylvania for your project, so you'll have to take a look at it, but they're very similar into what they're asking, and you just have to look at what is asking for. If you have any questions, be sure to ask. Here the business name and address is up on the left hand side. Assuming that you were signed up as an employer in the state, they would have sent you these through the mail in the old days with your name on it. These days they have it digitally already for you. SC withholding file number. This is your employer ID basically for South Carolina, and that would be a number that they have assigned to you, and you should have that number in the box. Underneath there it says FEIN. That's the federal employer ID number. This is the ID number that you got when you first filled out your Social Security form to be an employer, and that number is what you put on your 941 and everything else, your federal employer ID number. To the right it says which quarter. Now some states have the same form for all 4 quarters. In South Carolina they have the same form for the first 3 quarters, and then the 4th quarter is combined with an annual reconciliation. Other states have the annual reconciliation as a separate form from the quarterly, and that is what Pennsylvania does. So for South Carolina, you would check off which quarter that this is for and put in the year here. Notice that they have a sign here, stop, do not use for 4th quarter, use the WH1606. This is the WH1605, WH standing for withholding. Okay, use black ink only if you're not doing this. Now, South Carolina is preparing to have things where you will get online and do this. You will get online and do this. That will be your only option. Right now, you do have to, you can click on this and type on this, but you still have to send it in manually. Okay, so you can use black ink, or you can type on the form and then save it and send it in. Place an X on the box as an amended return. Amended return happens if you have filled out one of these forms for a particular quarter and the end of the quarter has gone by and then you found out you made a mistake. So now you have to make an amended return to fix whatever it was that needed to be fixed. Place an X in the box if there's a change of address, because of course, like I say, they already have your address up there. And place an X in the box if you no longer required to withhold. An account should be closed. So if you've closed out this business, or you have gotten rid of all the employees and you no longer have checks to withhold out, then you would click on this box. And there's a note. A return must be filed even if no South Carolina state income tax has been withheld during the quarter to prevent a delinquent notice. Do not enter negative numbers. All sent fields must be completed using numbers. Okay, in other words, we have learned on various income tax forms that you typically round up to the nearest dollar. We don't use pennies. But here on withholding forms, employee forms, we use pennies. And so this is just reminding you that. And they do not want you to use any negative numbers. Okay? And again, if you have not clicked the box where it says place an X in the box if no longer required to withhold, you don't just stop sending in these forms. Like sometimes students just decide, oh, I'm not going to pass this class, I'm going to stop coming in, and you just quit. You can't do that with employer forms because they can penalize you. You know, even though you didn't have any employees, that doesn't matter. You have to do things properly. You have to check that box and send it in, and then they put you in the system as not needing any of these forms. If they have sent you a form, you must fill it out, or you open yourself up to getting penalized. And if it's just a 0, you put zeros on there and you send it in, but you have to do that. You cannot just blow off the IRS or the South Carolina Department of Revenue. All right, now we get down to line 1, quarterly South Carolina state income tax withheld. Okay, so this is all the tax you withheld for the entire quarter, whatever quarter this is. Number 2, the quarterly South Carolina state income tax deposits or payments previously made. Okay, and they're made, South Carolina has a rule that theirs are made at the same time as your federal payments. So if you're on the federal deposit schedule of depositing monthly, then you would also deposit in South Carolina monthly. And so line 1 says, how much did you withhold from the employees? And line 2 says, how much deposits did you make to us? Which of course should be the same number. Line 3, South Carolina refund. If line 2 is greater than line 1, enter the difference. So if you ended up accidentally depositing too much from what you withheld, then you can get a refund of that back. Line 4 is South Carolina tax due. If you didn't deposit enough, then you owe some to get back up to line 1. If you are late, then you also owe line 5, which is penalty and interest due. For our project, of course, we're not going to be late and we're not going to screw up on our deposits. And so our line 1 and our line 2 would be the same if we were doing South Carolina. And the state of Pennsylvania is going to be the same way. For their quarterly form, they're going to have a question that says, how much total did you withhold and how much total did you deposit with us? And those two for your project should be the same. So you should have no refund and no tax due, and definitely no penalty and interest for being late. Line 6, net South Carolina state income tax, penalty and interest due. So this would be the total from 4 and 5. Of course, for you, that should be 0. Okay? It tells you where to mail this. Again, right now, even though the form is accessible online, you cannot submit it. It's not an e-filing thing like you have with income taxes. You have to actually mail this in. But they are working on that, and sometime in the next year or 2, they expect to have where you can e-file these as well as just getting the form. Okay? Then you can sign off if you want the South Carolina Department of Revenue to be able to discuss this return with someone who didn't sign it. Okay, so either that might be the bookkeeper who's the one who actually did it, or it might be a paid preparer, like a CPA firm or something like that, that the business took this to, whatever. If you check off yes and put the name of that person and phone number, then the Department of Revenue will have permission to talk to that person. Otherwise, they only have permission to talk to who's going to sign this. And signing it is just like signing the federal reform form. Who's going to jail if there's fraud? That's the person that needs to sign it. Okay? If you're just a bookkeeper, that doesn't need to be you. Okay? All right. There is a section of instructions for this form that is attached to the form itself.